Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your email questions and comments. Hit us up at dj@ArtistFirst.com. And now, live from the snow-covered wilderness of New Jersey, it's Michael and Margaret Lyons.
the snow-covered tundra. We are in the snow-covered tundra of New Jersey, and it is covered in wildlife, bears, fowl of various sorts, deer.
Herds of deer.
No caribou. But yes, I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And welcome to the show. And tonight's show will be it's not a part two, but it's a continuation. We are in the season of waiting, and winter is often sort of a season, a quiet season, a season of retreat, a season of solitude, and part of Advent, which is the season, the Christian season that we're in right now, is really the name means, that you're waiting for something to occur. So we're going to talk more about waiting. And this show, though, we're going to go in a little bit different direction. Last show we were talking about, the fact that waiting is I'm sorry. Oh, I'm making noise. Were you waiting for me to finish? Last show, we were talking about waiting, and tonight we're going to talk more about, learning to not be in a state of waiting. Tolle, of course, is always informative, and we take another one of his quotes to talk about this evening, and maybe we should lead with a quote. You want to do the quote?
Sure, I can do that. Presence is when you're no longer waiting for the next moment, believing that the next moment will be more fulfilling than this one. State of presence.
The state of presence. And by presence, Tolle is talking about the state of being. And there are many states of being, but all of them have this thing in common, that in essence, that moment, the moment that you're in right now, is the only one you have. It's the only one that matters in one regard. The moment of now is precious, ephemeral, fleeting, but you must be in it.
Mm-hmm.
And waiting is the absolute opposite of that. Waiting is literally sitting there completely preoccupied with hating, or at least not wanting, the present moment. You are focused on another moment. Most likely, almost always a future moment.
Right.
When things are going to be what you want them to be. And there's another quote, which I didn't bring into this, which is also germane, which is totally says that if you habituate yourself to waiting, and we talked a little bit about that last week, you can literally spend your whole life waiting, not liking the moment you're in, waiting for another moment. And come to the end of it, come to the absolute moment of now, when your existence on this, your corporeal existence on this, in this plane, comes to an end, and having done nothing but wait. And what a terrible waste.
Yes. You're not experiencing what's actually happening to you. You are almost exploring the bars of your cage, as opposed to looking past all that and going through the open door to the world outside.
You should explain that reference. That's a wonderful reference.
Well, just the way you decide to focus on things around you, forms those bars. It's a structure that you basically say, I need to only experience this much of the world. So there's this wall, and it's got this kind of shape, and this wall, and it's made out of this other stuff. My floor is this, and my ceiling is that. And you will only operate within that space. That is your cage. You've constructed a space around you, believing that that's your world, as opposed to understanding that your world is much more. It is way past the cage or the walls or the floor or the ceiling that you've set up.
There's that, yes, and I thought you were referring to the. There's a video. I'm sure there's a story about it as well. Of a wild animal, I believe it was either a tiger or a lion, that had been caged for many years, and then it was set free through the efforts of some organization. And the poor thing had lived within the cage so long that it just paced back and forth in an imaginary or in a mental cage. It didn't understand that not only was the cage gone or that the door was open, but it had habituated itself to waiting, to being in this space, just what you were talking about in that regard. And you can, through becoming inured, becoming used to your cage, accepting that the present moment, in essence not accepting because that's the wrong word here, but internalizing that the moment you're in now is not the moment you want. The moment you're in now is just a cage. And then, spending all your time thinking about the fact that you'd like to be somewhere else and not in the moment of now habituates yourself into that mental construct. And even if you've spent a long enough time in that sort of mental cage, you only see what Margaret just said, you only see the bars. You only see the floor and the ceiling. And even were it to be gone, and this is reminiscent of Plato's The Cave, even were it to be gone, if you've internalized the cave, you can't ever get out of it. You can't realize that your world, the world that the cave is in, is vast. It's infinite, but your world is the cave, and you carry it with you. You've internalized it. So the way out is what Tolle's talking about here. Is that when you are in a moment where you think that, oh gosh, I don't want to be here. This is, I'm stuck in traffic, or I'm stuck at the airport, or I'm stuck at my in-laws' house at Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, you guys don't want to be here. I want to be in anything else, any next moment whatsoever. And yet, the practice, which Tolle would say, is this is the moment. And in this moment of now, in the being state, you will realize something extremely important, that this moment, the moment that you're in right now, is where you need to be. It's where you're supposed to be. It's, in fact, where you are. And in knowing that, no moment is insignificant. You're where you're supposed to be, exactly where you're supposed to be in the moment of now, always. It makes it sort of important sounding, doesn't it? Because it really, really is. It's you. If you become a little bit more aware of your heart, you'll realize that situations will come up in your life, and if you reflect back on them, you say, that was exactly where I needed to be, because I wouldn't have gotten this, or that wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't have had this opportunity. But at the time, I didn't want it. And then if you sort of then turn that around and say, this moment, the moment right now that I'm feeling kind of, I don't want to be here, I have to be here. because I don't know how important the word I say to this person is, or the action I do for this situation is, or how important it was that I didn't walk out the door, angry, or I didn't, take this particular path, because where you are in your heart space, in awareness, is where you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's important, incredibly significant things that no one else in the universe can do, that you can do where you are. And only you can do. And once you kind of realize that that's the superpower that you have every moment of your existence here, changes things. You're like, here I am stuck in the airport. I must be here because I'm supposed to be here. Because there's something here that I need to do. And people say, well, that's kind of, egocentric. No. You have to remove all the ego out of it. It isn't because you're special. It's because you are. It's because you be. Sometimes the thing you're there for is completely not anything having to do with you. In fact, most of the times you're there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're there because there's a necessary presence in that moment, and you are that presence. And to abdicate it, to reject it, to say, oh well, only this wasn't your. What you're there for won't get done. That's a choice too, but it's not. It's made an unconscious choice rather than a conscious one.
And I believe that is something that most people push to the side. They don't realize the motivation behind making a certain decision. Most people say, well, I think about it and then I choose accordingly, if it's good for me or not. And you sit there and you go, good for you means what? Is it a feeling that's rising up inside of you and it's like, I feel funny thinking about that? Is it an old memory that rises up? Were you just triggered? Was that a hot button? Mm-hmm. What charge is actually rising up in you when you begin to look at something and put it into a scenario or story? I think it's very funny because I was talking to a group of ladies, and they all agreed that, we have a tendency to get into a situation and we see somebody and you make these judgment calls. I know exactly what that person is going to do. Or I know exactly how that person is going to react to whatever the situation is. And then we started laughing going, because we realized we know nothing. We know nothing about the other person, what their experiences have been, or even if you understood what their experiences have been, you don't absolutely know how they're going to react to things. It's this conceited voice in your head that continually tells you these things that, oh, well, I know how that's going to work. And look at that voice. Perceive that voice, and you see the I know better than anybody attitude. It's fascinating. And I was grateful that the ladies in the group all realized that, hey, we all do that. There was no ego on display, if you would. Well, I don't do that.
Isn't that, ego is the exact word there, because you see a perfect stranger, or you just see someone who you've never met before, and the ego instantly wants to categorize them. They want to tell you who they are, put them in a role, and start a story. about them, and it's a habitual thing with the ego, because the ego, as Tolle says often, the ego needs the other. They need someone to compare. The ego needs someone to compare itself with and to feel superior to. The ego always wants to feel superior, or in the cases where it knows it's not, it wants to feel, well, I wouldn't do that. These people are fawning over this famous person, but I wouldn't. It puts itself into this situation where whatever action it's contemplating or taking is always the right action, and everyone else is wrong or just misinformed. They just don't know what the they don't know what's good for them, kind of thing. These are all stories that the ego tells itself.
I believe that the phrase that Tolle was saying about how it's always looking for a better moment, that is what the ego does. It's making this judgment call because it feels that there's always a better moment and I can always do better. And it's so seductive. That is so seductive to believe that, well, I know better. I don't need to be, I've already judged this moment, it's not all that great. Instead of it being the moment that it is, it categorizes it, it puts it into a story, and it's the old, I know what's going to happen. It's fascinating to see that process unfold, and it's very difficult to catch yourself doing it. That's the challenge right there. Catching yourself in mid-act.
And it's illustrative because the ego will also say, this is a wonderful moment, but the other one we had the other day was so much better. Oh, and if only this, it would be just perfect if, and this, even when you're having fun, the ego inserts itself with comparisons.
And what I always thought was fascinating was when we used to do the beach trips, and with the other neighbors that were there, they would rate the beach day. Oh, this is a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. Meaning, there was this category of things. Oh, no, it's only a 7 because there's a westerly going on and we get flies. Meanwhile, it's warm water. Temperature is great. Children are playing. Oh, but it's only a 7 because it's flies. And it just went on and on. This criteria of rating it was fascinating to me. And I'm sitting there going, you have all your children. How could it not be a beautiful day for you? But I never really said that because that's not where they needed to be. They were not in that space. But I wasn't in that cage of it's got to be a 10 for me to enjoy the beach. I never go to the beach unless it's a 10. I mean, phrases like that, and I'm looking at them going, really?
and to bring it back from the ego wants to be the arbiter of what is good and what is not, even internally, even to yourself. You say, well, if only this, if only I could lose 5 pounds, if only my hair was blonde, if only the day was just 1 or 2 degrees warmer, if only the wind wouldn't stop. So it's all this constant litany of less than perfection, meaning that every moment there is no perfect moment. So the ego does nothing but steal joy from the present and take you from the present moment into another moment. Oh, if we just wait long enough, then this will happen. That. Oh, we waited all day, and it just we'll just tomorrow maybe tomorrow will be a perfect day. Who knows? This constant litany of as you said just a moment ago, it always wants the better deal. And what's the phrase, Ma? It's the enemy of the good is the perfect, or something like that. In essence, rather than be in the moment and then say, in this moment, the water, as you just said, the water is warm, the sun is bright, everything is at peace. The children are playing, amongst themselves. No one's fighting. You just go, here I am. I'm going to be here. I'm going to let the sun warm my face. I'm going to listen to the waves. I'm going to just relax and be in this moment. And let the ego die away, because it's all it's trying to do. Every moment of every second that the ego is trying to do is to try and take your attention away from the now and focus it on the voice. Oh, if only this, oh, if only that. Oh, if they're probably having a sale downtown. Oh, we probably could be over here. Oh, we shouldn't be spending any time doing this. Oh, it's... and did you have a relaxing day? No, the voices in my head wouldn't let me do it. They said this and they had said that and they said that. It's you don't.
There were so many things I had to do. I just couldn't relax.
I couldn't relax.
And you sit there and you go, okay, why are you here? You could do the same mess at your own house.
Right, but it's this. And to go back to what you just said, believing that the next moment will be more fulfilling than this one. That this one is almost perfect, but the next one could be perfect, so I better wait for that one.
Yes, that grass is always greener.
The grass is always greener. And, you can habituate yourself to the point where you are never happy in any circumstance. You can steal joy from everything, and really buy misery wholesale.
And what's fascinating is we've trained ourselves to stay within that cage. We and I sit there and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This was a tool to start with, just to help you organize the madness that's around you. Okay? It's a tool. But when this tool becomes your everything, how can you live life? This is only a tool. It reminds you of Plato's cave, where everybody's just looking through this one small hole at this image flickering on the wall, which is the illusion, which they believe is everything. And reality is actually outside the cave, on top of the cave, where the grass is and the trees are and the breeze. It's interesting to see that we do this. We choose to do this. And I ask the question, why? Why do we do that?
And maybe you turn it around and say, why does the ego do it? And Tully's brings this up, that the ego is an energy entity. But what is it born of? Where does it come from? It seems to infect humans at a certain age. Whatever that age is, maybe it's 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. You get this ego infection. Let's just say that you start hearing voices in your head. Oh, it should be this. Oh, if only it were that. And maybe from the best intentions, some of those voices are people who were early influences on your young self, your parents or your siblings. But you internalize those voices. And then those voices want to get louder. They want to grow. It's not just, as you said, a tool that you can call up and it organizes things. I really need to get this stuff together. And there's my assistant, which can do those things, part of my mental toolbox. That'd be great. When you say, I'm done with you now, put you in the box, I'm going to be here because I've done all the organizing, now I can just be. No. That voice wants to hang around. It wants to, well, you're not done organizing. The world isn't perfect yet. And so we have to just continually give you something new to worry about, or something new to not have, or something new that will turn your attention away from the present moment. As again Tolle says, the present moment, often overlooked or habitually overlooked. If you're in the habit of listening to the ego voice tell you that what you're doing right now isn't important, but next week, oh, that's going to be great, or what we did yesterday, that was almost perfect. It was pretty close. We should think about that, and not now. You're missing what we said before, Margaret. You're missing the opportunity to be the most significant thing for the universe. The thing that needs to be done now by you is because you're here now in the present moment of being, and potentially the present moment of acting or doing, but just being first.
And how precious is that? Most people, they just, they have that scale of what's important. Is it a 10? Mm-hmm. And you look at it and you go, no, it's past 10. It's a multiplicative process, exponential. Your experience in this moment of now is so unique. You, as a human being, is a unique energy point in space and time. And you are the only one in this particular moment. Doesn't matter if you've got other people there. The interaction with the world around you is quite unique to you, and the relationship you have with your outside world sings its own song, and only you have this song. So at that point, you are this wondrous gift in this moment of now. Point of singing, a point of weaving, a point of building, a point of awareness. And to take in that awareness where your song, how is your song influencing things around you? Because it always does. I think that's part of the story most people tell themselves. They don't believe that their very presence changes the space around them. But it does. It does, and it's so special when that happens. If you don't believe me, just watch how a little one, just being there, and wakes up and opens its eyes and looks around, and suddenly everything shifted in that moment. And you could say, oh, well, it's a baby, it's special. It's like, no. You do that all the time. But you basically have just said, it's just. No. You do it all the time. And it is so precious. So precious. I think if the connection could be made back to that moment, understanding that your presence shifts things all around you, you would never denigrate yourself ever again.
Mm-hmm. Realize your preciousness.
Realizing that how valuable you are in this moment because your awareness is there. And you are capable of shifting and changing things around you just by your presence.
Right.
Wondrous.
And yet, the ego will tell you constantly no. And constantly, the interesting thing, Margaret, is what does the ego want? It wants your attention. Mm-hmm. It knows how precious your presence is. It wants to bask in and steal from and live off of your presence, your consciousness, your awareness. And stealing your awareness from the present moment by telling you, this isn't important. What's important is 10 minutes from now. This isn't important. What's important is what happened yesterday. This isn't important. It's going to be so much better in tomorrow when this happens, and you notice that those call them lies. Those stories keep you constantly in a state of unfulfillment and desire. Where you are now is unimportant. Where you will be is what you want.
It's the phrase, most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
There you go. It was Frost? No.
I can look it up if you
have to look it up, but that exactly exemplifies it. Is this...
The quiet desperation is the state that you put your soul into, because the soul is here to experience things. And when the ego is putting this cage around it, it cannot experience things except through this, what you call the cage, believing that somehow this cage is going to help you, when all it does is block you. And you must make the conscious decision to go through the open door of the cage, because you're never locked in. That's the illusion.
Exactly, the illusion. And the ego is less a taskmaster and more of the cage, in essence. It says, pay attention to me. Well, you know what? We're locked into one thing, which is that this is the end of the first half hour. So let's go back to the studio, take a little break, and we'll come back on the other side. But don't wait. Just be in presence, and it'll be good. It'll go by like that.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some Moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the Adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhum.music.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. This is one of my favorite shows, if I'm allowed to say that. Let's get back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
From the tundra. Yes, and Margaret sourced the quote, so.
Oh, yes, it is Henry David Thoreau.
Henry David, Uncle Henry, and on Walden Pond.
Yes.
Yes.
Most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
And Uncle Henry and Uncle Walt Whitman, both of them had, I would say, different ways of appreciating of the preciousness of the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't do it in the way Tolle has done it, made it into a philosophy and a practice, and really explored down to the depths. But I think they lived it viscerally. They understood it at a pure consciousness level, at a subliminal and they weren't trying to tear it apart and give it, do this, do this, do the other thing. It was a practice. It was an actual experiential practice.
Well, that's where poetry is the only way that you can begin to communicate those instances. And you have to have an audience that's willing to go down that road, because most people don't want to even expose themselves to that.
And some of our favorites. I mean, we should probably bring Thoreau into some of this, like Gibran and Whitman and Tolle and Longfellow and Frost and so many others. They really understand that that poem, the poet is oftentimes crafting his or her thoughts in what appears to be a very boring, waiting type of moment. This is the true application of the mental to codify what is the now and to observe something that everyone else just passes right by. two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, which was frost. And anyone could come by and look, there's two roads in a wood, who cares? No, this was the poetry of that moment struck him, and he was able to put it into words, into something that now, years after I'm sure he's passed away, we can all read that and feel that moment, that incredibly precious moment, which was experienced originally by Frost in the sense that he was just in presence, looking into a moment of now and extracting from it the true beingness of it, and then putting it down in words that now, as true art and true poetry, resonates. It becomes an eternal moment. We talked about this before, about when you do something that touches through the moment of now into eternity, because there's no time in now. And then someone will come to that thing and read those words or look at that artwork, and they'll be in that moment of now. And in your eternal moment, and able to touch that exact image, and it means something. It touches you in the part of you which is not the ego. It's the heart. It's the eternal. And say, yeah, I feel that.
You are present. And you are relating with the world around you. The description of Frost's poetry, of coming to a fork in the road. It speaks on many levels, many decisions that the people have taken, and taking the one less traveled.
And poetry, good poetry, beautiful poetry, it has its own presence. Tolle says, find a tree and it will teach you about stillness. But if you find a poet or find a poem, it can bring you I don't want to say it's a frozen moment, but it's a living moment, a moment of now, perceived through the eyes of another, but so beautifully wrought that you can, through that poem, perceive a moment of now with your own presence. So that ability to do that, the Pietà, the Michelangelo's David, name them, all these beautiful works of art. If you really understand what makes it art, is that it has touched the eternal through that moment of now. And then because it has that presence, it's acquired the presence of now, you can then re-experience it. And every one of those things was made by a human being, and probably took a long time, where they could have said, well, I want this to be finished. I want it to be done. I hate mixing the paint. I hate sitting scribbling along. You had to be in that moment now, do all the steps and persevere and understand that this precious moment, all of the precious moments to put this thing down and craft it, suddenly resonate when it reaches its fulfillment. So that everything up to it was just part of that fulfillment. It was just as fulfilling as the beginning is just as good as the ending, if you will, of that craft work. And then you have it encapsulated in an instant. That little phrase from the poem of Frost, it takes 3 seconds to say, and it can change your life. The poem by Longfellow, that wonderful poem by Longfellow that Christopher loved, there are words in there which spoke to his heart and spoke to our hearts and speak to many others and connected him to the eternal. And even in his youth, in what he would say is he was only 5 or 6 years old. He had the touch of that now, that presence. And he knew, and you were able to help him interpret it, but he knew that there was something there which really meant something. Be the hero, you know. The whole idea of the struggle that was in that Longfellow poem, it resonated with him. And you could have said, well, I want it to be different. I want it to be a different moment. I want this moment to not be. No. That in that moment, when we could have said everything else, we didn't want to be here, you found that incredibly precious thing in the moment of now.
The being state is a natural state when children are so young. And they may say, yeah, I don't want to do that, but they're there. And they get through it quickly so that they can begin to try to experience what else is going on. You know, nobody wants to go through a cancer treatment. But if you've got to do it, and you decide to do it because you want to live, I mean, it's as simple as that. There were, when you talk to the older children, if you want to call them, when they start becoming teenagers and whatnot, they have reasons of this and that, and they lose the moment that's right in front of them, and they begin to plan. You know, well, I had these plans. I wanted to be this. I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to be, talking to the children, it's just I had things planned for my future. And now I have to deal with cancer. The younger ones didn't do that. They're like, yeah, I got to deal with this now. What else is going on? What is going on right now? Oh, you playing the game? Can I play? It was always, they always came back to true. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. Whereas the older they were already building stories at that point. And it's difficult when they sit there and they tell themselves what they could have been, if only. But the if only is an illusion. This is where you are right now. That's all there is. But the if only is usually causes more pain in the soul of those young ones than anything else. And they learn how to think in the if only by the people, the parents, the adults that are around them. That's what I've found. Instead of being able to sit there and say, okay, today we do this. We've already charted a general course. But what can be done right now? All right, this is the treatment I got to go through, but what are we doing? Oh, we have, whether it's a movie or a show, or they want to make something, whether it's food or playing with toys or blocks or a video game or whatever. But there was always something to engage and play with to see how it goes. And then they get tired. And they get tired faster because they may have gone through some type of treatment. So it's taking it moment by moment where the preciousness is. Understanding this moment is so important. It becomes very obvious when you are fighting for a life, but to understand that every moment is unique and precious. And having that contrast where you literally are trying to just keep your baby alive can be a very harsh one. You can begin to lose your mind at that point because you were thinking, oh no, all the fear can rise up. He or she may die. He or she may undergo suffering and pain. It's like the suffering and pain is happening right now as you're speaking. That's not what they're there for. They're not looking to you to explain to them what the suffering and pain is. That's your suffering and pain. Where are they in this moment? And are you going to keep that moment clean so they can experience that which is around them without your cage?
Well, and back to the cage, what you said there before was really deserves amplification. The older kids, or the kids who had started the ego stories, were in more suffering. Mm-hmm. The purpose of the ego is not, the purpose of it telling you that this moment is to be rejected and that there's a better one coming, isn't to make your life any easier. It makes it worse.
Yes.
The hearing the ego stories about regret. Oh, you could have been this and you could have done that, but if only. If only. It is literally a form of torture. Yes. It literally amplifies all the suffering. It makes everything that you're going through worse, 100 times worse.
Yes.
And then you say to yourself, well, you can't just live life as though it wasn't happening. So no, you're missing the point entirely. The ego stories is you're not even living this moment. You're living a fantasy.
It's a projection.
A projection, and you're suffering because of a self-inflicted, unattainable fantasy. If you live in the moment of now, live as Margaret said, as though your life depended on it, even if it doesn't, but let's say it did. Yes, there's a bad moment of now, if you want to say it's bad. There's pain here. It's something I have to go through. But just being in that moment, you realize that, yes, it's here now, and now it's a little less, and now it's easing, and now it's done, and now there's a video game, or I feel a little better, or I want to take a nap, or all those things taken moment by moment by moment. My friend is here. We can talk. We can interact with each other. You're in your being state. Nothing can make you suffer, except the fact you have to be in a moment of now, which might have a trial. But to reject the moment of now and to live in the world of if only, and I wanted, and if this was this, and if this was that, and regrets and fantasies, is 1,000 times worse. Because in the moment of now, something good may happen, and you may experience it. But in the moment of the fantasies and regrets, you're never going to even see that something good happened. You're not here.
Right.
You can be in the middle of paradise and torture yourself so that you believe everything is horrible. Just like the people on the beach. There it is. You're at the beach. The sun is warm. The waves are there. The water is beautiful. Oh, there's a fly. Oh, if only, next week I heard that it's going to be, I'm going to go home. I'm going to say, it's a horrible, horrible day. And you're like, yeah. Really?
Really.
Be here, be now.
But that illustration is succinct because we see many people who do that to themselves continually. And you sit here and you go, will you walk through the open door and release that? Because you have to decide to focus on that for it to exist. If you decide not to focus on it and experience what is, then you walk through the open door into freedom. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be hunky-dory, by the way. Like happy, happy, joy, joy. It's like, no. The experiences that are around you are the experiences that are around you. And to want to believe that it's only going to be happy is another story that must be released. That's like you're trying to go through the door and you get caught by the latch.
Yeah, but I would say the one thing, which is true, is that even in the worst, in the external ego-judged worst of circumstances, in the being moment of now, you can decide that you will not suffer. That you accept the moment of now, as though you had chosen it, but you just accept this is the moment of now, and the suffering. At least the suffering goes away. There is joy, the being state of joy. This is something else we may talk about in the near future, but the being state of joy isn't like you say. It's not good. It's not everything's wonderful all the time. That's not it at all. It's that in the being state, if you hold yourself in joy, it doesn't matter. In some ways, it doesn't matter what happens. You decide to be joyful anyway.
Yeah, the words fall short.
They fall short, but it's like that.
If you are in the state of the now, and you've accepted that both good and bad happen in this now, but you will abide in the now because I am here, and I am interacting with those that I love, and it is precious to me. This moment is precious to me. And those that also happen to come into our circle of a love relationship are also part of the experience. And then when they walk into that circle, into that room, they feel the presence of awareness and love happening around them. And there were so many people that used to come into our room all hours of the day or night. And I'm talking not just the children, but the parents, the doctors, the nurses, the orderlies, the technical staff.
Yeah.
They would come in because they wanted just to talk, because we were not spinning around
with stories or regrets or woe is me's or any of that stuff.
We had been transferred. Just a quick story. We had been transferred into another room, and it was a double room, but there was nobody in the other bed. So we had these tiny little TVs on an arm, and it was late. Chris was tired. So, and it was one of those long days where, too much busyness, unsettled. So I had turned the music on. You could get different stations on there. And what I did is I went to the other bed and I turned the same station on so that we had this reverberation through the room of this very calming kind of music. And I had, instead of the Klieg lights, the very bright lights, I just kind of lowered it a little bit, and he gently fell asleep. I had one of the doctors come in and just look at me. He goes, I like this room. So soothing in here. And it's like, yes, it is. This is what I mean by you can create space wherever you go, and you choose the kind of space you will create.
Hmm.
And it influences people you don't even realize.
In presence. And that's exactly it. You could have sat there and said, well, I reject this moment. I don't want this moment. This is the most horrible moment in the world. I'm going to wait, and it'll be much better tomorrow. No. It is what it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it is what it is.
I see.
It is the end of the show. So I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.
And it was worth the wait, right?